And we have people working for us for 30, 35 years. We're very proud of that. How can I make sure I build a resilient organization of people that can really deliver these services to our clients in a meaningful and positive way, scaling an organization and maintaining that cohesion of people? Because you don't want, if you like your culture, you love your culture, you don't want it to change if you go 50% or 100% larger. Don't diminish or underestimate the criticality of the maintenance of your culture and your messaging and your aspirations. It will dissipate over the internet lines. You've got to figure out a way to ensure that your culture is still passing through the camera. If you want to be a successful business person, you need to be aspirational at the day after you start and until the day before you retire, right? For sure. But you have to moderate that aspiration, or at least couple it with, I got to be very careful about that next step I take. Make sure that you're always double checking yourself and that you're not getting too big for your britches. Make sure that you are not kind of buying your own BS. I hope it's okay to say that here, and I think that you need to be humble. And so I really, that to me is important, because think about what that does. You want to engender excitement and enthusiasm with people and challenge them all the time. But you also have to support them so that when they take a leap into that challenge to learn something new, learn a new discipline, that they know that you're there to support them. You always have to double check yourself. How do I do a really good job at what I want to do with enough white space to grow the business and really feel good about the aspirations I have towards it without boiling the ocean, without trying to be a master of nothing, right? The company had been started by my grandfather, and it was in its kind of almost like its pre-formation stages. He says, we had Sunday dinner every night together as a family. And he said, I have this idea for this business, and I'd like you to write the computer program for this business. And I kind of looked at him. I was 16 years old at the time. And I looked at him and I went, I'm a gamer. I'm a video gamer. I don't know that I'm a computer programmer. He says, well, I think you're smart enough to do it. And I said, okay. And I said, I need about $50 to go buy a book and read it and figure out how to do it.
This is the Business Philosopher Within You podcast. I'm your host, Bhavesh Naik. A core theme of our podcast is building high-performing, resilient businesses that can stand the test of time. We often explore how leaders identify a critical market need and pioneer solutions that become widely adopted, driving scale and success over decades. To shed some light on just how to create such a business and sustain its momentum, I've invited a very special guest to join us. Todd Greenbaum is the president and CEO of Input One, a digital billing and payment solutions provider for the insurance industry. Joining the company in 1984, Todd has been instrumental in its success. He led it from managing $10 million in premiums with 5 employees to servicing over $16 billion in premiums for more than 2 million users with over 150 employees. In 2025, Input One was recognized on the Inc. 5000 list for a 3-year revenue growth of 115%. Todd's commitment to innovation is a cornerstone of Input One's success over its 40 years of leadership in digital transformation. And I'm pleased to have you on this podcast, Todd.
Thanks, Bhavesh. I'm really happy to be here.
And a special shout out to you, our listener. Hey, listen, we learn from each other and grow with each other. This podcast won't be possible without your interest and engagement. Please remember to like, subscribe, follow, share, and comment. But most important, ask and answer questions. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for being here, Todd. And 1984, that seems like a long time. and I've been there. So in terms of the number of years, right? So what were the circumstances that led you to Input One about this time, 1984? If you can just kind of take us behind the scenes a little bit.
Sure. Well, it was very serendipitous. The company had been started by my grandfather, and it was in its kind of almost like its pre-formation stages. He says, we had Sunday dinner every night together as a family. And he said, I have this idea for this business, and I'd like you to write the computer program for this business. And I kind of looked at him. I was 16 years old at the time. And I looked at him and I went, I'm a gamer. I'm a video gamer. I don't know that I'm a computer programmer. He says, well, I think you're smart enough to do it. And I said, okay. And I said, I need about $50 to go buy a book and read it and figure out how to do it. And that's what happened. I mean, it was really not, it wasn't planned at all. He just had this business started and he needed a young kid who was willing to learn or write code for him. That was it.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, yeah. And here you are. So what was the original idea? What was we talk about this who question. Who was it that you started the business for in terms of whose problems you set out to solve or whose aspirations or goal objectives that you set out to meet? That
Yeah,
there's always this idea of a customer that will serve. It could be an organization, but also it could be a human being, a person, right?
yeah, sure. So the business was originally formed to help banks start a new lending type of business. So in the insurance business, there are three ways to pay for an insurance premium, one of which is to finance the premium. And that's in those cases where there's a great product, but there's no payment plan. So how does the
Right.
policyholder pay for it if they don't want to
Yeah.
pay cash? They need a
Uh-huh.
finance company, just like the same way you finance a car when you buy a car from a dealership.
Right.
And so there was a need where banks were looking to get into this business, but they didn't have the technology or the operational understanding of the asset to know how to do it. So my grandfather said, I know this asset. He was in the insurance business before. He had owned a managing general agency and he had owned a finance company. And so
Sure.
he said, let's start a business to help banks provide premium financing, insurance financing for their needs so that a larger constituency of policyholders could have access to a payment plan for the product that they really want. And by building a kind of a tech-enabled service business,
Sure.
that would be, and the clients would be banks originally. That was the genesis of the idea.
And how did you, I don't know if you pivoted from there or how did you expand from there in terms of servicing the insurance industry directly? If I understand correctly, that's who your customer is today, right?
Yeah. So I'm a big believer in concentric circles, building by concentric circles, meaning
Sure.
a lot of people, it's wonderful to be aspirational.
Uh-huh.
But sometimes you can step too far outside of your knowledge zone, and maybe you make a mistake because you didn't know
Sure.
what you were getting into. And I had this instinct that was not the right thing to do. So what we did is we started out as a tech-enabled service business, helping banks get into the premium finance business.
Yeah.
Then we said, well, some of the banks came to us and said, we love what you're doing, but we want to buy your software. We don't want you to just service our business.
Yeah.
So we said, okay, let's take the same software we use for our tech-enabled service business and let's sell software. So now we had a servicing business and a software business.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Then we started to expand it into the insurance vertical. So it wasn't just banks. We started offering our services to insurance brokers and managing general agencies and insurance carriers.
Yeah.
And then from that, we evolved into billing, which was it's a tweak on the financing. It's instead of running a finance company, you run a billing department for an insurance company.
Uh-huh.
There's a significant similarity between the two. And then we added on top of that a digital payments business. And so it was just these little evolutionary steps that we took, stepping a little bit outside of our comfort zone, a little bit of what we knew, and building more product lines and distributing to a greater, a larger a cohort of the financial ecosystem, including insurance beyond banking. And that's really how the process evolved.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love the way that you set it out, which is something, I think what you're saying is that it's better to have a small segment of the clientele being served and then really master how you service that in terms of, the service aspect, but also what you do to serve that customer well.
Yeah.
And then, and own it and do it really well. And then grow out into concentric circle, and then take that same asset in terms of intellectual property and your processes, things like that, and grow that out to other segments of the market, right?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So I was just going to say that when you're young and really, really aspirational, that's not to say that you're not aspirational when you're older, because I still feel like I am. But when you're young and super aspirational, it's you heard a common phrase, boil the ocean, right? You look out the world and there's so much possibility, and there probably is, but it can lead to a loss of focus.
Yeah,
and so you end
absolutely.
up finding it's like, well, gee, now I've taken on too much and I'm really not good at anything. I'm a jack of all trades, master of none.
Right.
So I was always cautious about that. You always have to double check yourself. How do I do a really good job at what I want to do with enough white space to grow the business and really feel good about the aspirations I have towards it, without boiling the ocean, without trying
Yeah,
to be a master of nothing, right? And so I was
absolutely.
always conscious of that. And I think that that's a really important thing for people to think about it. It's hard to do when you're young and you want to go
Yeah,
just conquer the world. You
yeah,
have to restrain yourself. It's not easy to do. When you're older, you realize that you've been through
yeah.
the experiences of it. But it's that's one of the things, I know. One of the questions you always ask is, what kind of advice do you have? And I'll restate that later when we get to that question,
Sure,
but
sure. Yeah,
it's
yeah. And
important.
yeah, absolutely 100%. Yeah, yeah. And I've seen this again and again and again. Successful businesses, one thing that they have is focus. You talk about boiling the ocean, they boil a bucket of water and first, right?
Yeah.
And to get that really, you know, dialed in, they really
Yeah.
know how to do that. And
Yeah.
then, they go in, then go to the bathtub and, so,
Yeah. Then the pool and then the
and
ocean.
the pool, right? You're right. And then the lake. So, um, and I love that. I love that the two analogies. We're kind of mixing the metaphors here, the ripple and all that. So I
Yeah.
love it though. But that's the focus is so important, right?
Yep.
And
That's right.
and you hit the nail on the head with that. We also talk about vision a little bit. The idea of a vision. So, and I think I kind of have an inkling as to what happening with your business. There's two kinds of stories I hear when I ask the question, what was the vision when you started the business, right? And the people say it's either I had this grand vision and we started executing. We had a business plan and we got all the components together. We put the team together and we started executing. And then there's this other side of the story, which is the other spectrum, which is that we did one thing, and we had some traction with that. And, and then we grew from there, right? And then the combination is, you start doing one thing and then you pivot. So what was the vision that you had when you got involved with the business with Input
Well,
One?
mine was definitely the secondary one. I didn't
Uh-huh.
have this grand vision.
Yeah.
We focused on creating this tech-enabled business, and then we
Sure.
kind of expanded as the demands happened. As I explained earlier, we had the tech-enabled business, and then there was the demand for the software.
Yeah.
And then what happened? This is really interesting. So in the insurance financing business, it is a very narrow aspect of the business. Of all of the insurance premiums that are purchased, probably about
Yeah.
10% of them are financed.
Right.
The other
Right.
90% are either paid in full or an insurance company offers a billing program. Just like if you were to buy insurance from Geico or Liberty Mutual, they would
Right.
send you a bill every quarter or every month, right?
Yeah.
So I looked at my business as one that only served the premium financing business. And then I saw, gosh, we're only tackling 10% of the available TAM. If we made a few tweaks to our operation, a few tweaks to our software, we could go tackle the other 90% of the TAM. And so it wasn't that vision wasn't readily apparent to me early on. I was so focused on being great at what we did. But then I said, I need to create a bigger TAM. How do I do that without stepping too far outside of this concentric circle concept I had talked to you earlier? So the right balance was to say, if I could go and attack a larger portion of the insurance ecosystem without stepping too, but still staying in the insurance business. I wasn't going out there financing cars and financing tractors and creating payment plans for any number of things. So that's really what it was. So it was more of it wasn't a predefined vision in the beginning. It was a vision that adapted over time to attack and be able to fulfill the needs of a larger TAM.
Okay, got it. And TAM, TAM, that's total assets under management. Is that
total addressable market?
Total addressable market. All right, got it. Yeah. It seems like you pay attention to that metric quite a bit. Do you?
Oh, well, of course you do. I mean, the idea is, I think a lot of businesses do this. If you look at it, it's like, how much of the market do I have? And by the way, how do I expand that market? Because any business that's aspirational is looking for a larger customer base to serve. So if your product today or your service doesn't serve a large enough base, cohort of the industry, then you say, how do I get there? Because certainly all of us want a business where we could never outsell all the clients, right? We could never sell to all the clients. That's a wonderful place to be, right? Because you have an untappable TAM. You can't, you can never reach the end of the universe of people that could potentially buy your products. So if you do see that yourself running into an end of that TAM, then if you're really aspirational, you want to find a bigger TAM, right? A bigger market that you can address. And how do you then tweak your products and services to address that market? So I'm always thinking about that.
Absolutely. there's often a why, right, behind the what. As in, what is the vision, right? This is what we want, and this is the kind of customers we want to serve, and this is the kind of business we want to build, and there is a why underneath that. Is your why the same as what? When you joined the company, the company was already there when you joined the company, right? So you said grandfather or father.
It was in its infancy, so it was there, but just barely.
Right? Yeah. So was your why, or well, first of all, what was your why, or did you have one?
I mean, just as I mentioned to you, it was so serendipitous with my grandfather. I really didn't have a why. I mean, it's 16 years old. Who has a why, right? I mean, you're not really thinking about that. So it was just, I loved computers and technology.
Yeah.
And he said, here's an opportunity to actually have a purposeful process, not just building games because you like games.
Yeah, right.
We're going to actually build the underpinnings of the technology platform of a business. And I'm like, well, that sounds pretty exciting because I always loved business. So that was the why initially, right? Just to get involved in something exciting and at a very young age, right?
Yeah.
But that changes over time, right? Because what ends up happening is you start to see like, okay, I understand what this business does, but how could I solve other problems that are bigger than the ones that I'm solving today?
Got it.
Right?
Yeah.
And so, yes, the why has transformed certainly quite a bit, and I think, I don't know that I don't know if I gave you an opportunity to ask it, but I think you might be asking me how, what is your why today? How is that different than what it was before? Right?
Yeah.
So today what I find is over decades of doing this, insurance companies and insurance people that play in the insurance system ecosphere, their greatest contribution, in my judgment,
right,
the highest return on effort and human capital, is to invent new insurance products and distribute them to the public.
Yeah.
But all of the things that have to go into that, it's a very different discipline. How do you build the systems, the operational workflows? And yes, it's a necessity that they do that.
Right.
What I find is that they're not as good as that as they are building the product and selling it. Identifying how do I price an insurance product to address a particular peril or risk, and how do I sell it at a good price? Right? How do I do that? That's what I want them to do. So my aspiration now, my vision now, is to bring forth tremendous technology, scalable and constantly evolving, couple that with incredible operational discipline and focus, and plug it into the back of an insurance company so that they are they don't have to worry about billing and collecting all the premiums. They can go out there and create great insurance products and sell great insurance products, knowing with full confidence that the technology and the operational aspects, the gears that have to turn behind the scenes to ensure that what they sell is delivered correctly and efficiently and with a great customer experience, that's what excites me.
And you talk about operational efficiency and excellence, right? And that is so important, right? Because it's not just you doing it and two other people, right? We're building an organization, or you have built an organization that does that. So then that problem or that becomes challenging, right? So the question I have for you, Todd, is, there are people who come on the journey with us, as we go to a vision, right? And that's, it could have my vision, the leadership's vision. And then there are other people that I'm bringing on the journey with me, right? So, and that goes into the culture of the organization, right? So if there was something that you can point out about the culture that you're building to deliver this excellence and operational efficiency to the marketplace, how would you characterize that? What's the culture that you're building and also continue to build?
Well, generally speaking, I'm a big believer in being kind to people. You treat the janitor the same way you treat the chairman of the board, right? And so I believe that that's super, super critical. And you want to engender excitement and enthusiasm with people and challenge them all the time. But you also have to support them so that when they take a leap into that challenge to learn something new, learn a new discipline, that they know that you're there to support them, that no question, genuinely, you mean it when you say that no question is stupid. Ask me the question if you're confused. Right. So I think, so from our perspective, the culture is curiosity, respect, and enthusiasm.
Yeah.
Right? And support, really collaboration, but just collaboration in that if we're going to work together to solve a problem, but also if I see you struggling, I see you're not sure, I'm going to jump in there and I'm going to back you up and I'm going to help you out. And when you do those things and you couple them together, you have an organization that really, a lot of sparks fly, and it's really fun to watch.
Yeah. I think, one of the things that you were kind of alluding to is this idea of innovation, because, technical excellence, right, or technological excellence seems to be a sort of like a theme in what you're building and how you service your customers, right?
Well, it has to be it has to be, because, if you're not worried about your technology getting behind, even if it's not behind, if you're not worried about it all the time, then there's something wrong. You need to constantly be cutting edge. You need to be at that invention point all the time, inventing something new, because if you don't, someone else will. Exactly.
Yeah. And especially in your industry, and it's a highly competitive industry, and the market is pretty big. So
it's a huge market, and it has been in the doldrums for a little while, but now all of that catch up is happening. I always say that the insurance industry is it's probably like the last vestige of the financial services industry to digitize, right? So there were years when banks were digitizing and brokerage firms have been digitizing, and all elements of the financial services business have been digitizing, auto lending companies and so on. But insurance has been lagging in that area. But all of that is changing with this insurtech. Insurtech has been a growing element of the financial ecosystem now for the last several years, and it's growing at a very rapid catch-up rate. So you really got to stay. You really got to stay ahead of things.
And how big a part of the insurtech is AI as we see it today?
So look, there's very specific elements of AI that can provide significant benefits to the insurance industry. Claims, you've got a drone can fly over a damaged house and take photographs and give you an assessment of what that is, so that maybe a claim payment can get faster over to a policy holder faster. You can have claims, you could have underwriting in new policies so that they can evaluate all sorts of data elements at a very rapid rate in a logical sequence that the technology previously wasn't able to do.
Sure.
And then, of course, a lot of the standard things where insurance is not one of those things where there's very little customer contact. I mean, it's not like you're selling someone a mouse and it either works or it doesn't.
You never see them again. Right.
Where insurance is one of those evolving things. Hey, I bought car insurance, but now my daughter bought a new car, or my son got into an accident, or we moved homes, or we bought another home and I need the car insured over there. There's always questions. So having a database of questions and that an AI agent can answer for you, so that they can get answers faster and ultimately get to a person only when they need it, and you've got more people available because you've got the AI element of that answering the more mundane questions. So that's a very important part of it as well. And look, there's a constant evolution of this. AI is going to be fulfilling needs in our industry that we don't even know about yet, right? So but we're at the beginning of stages of that, but it's making meaningful advances for sure.
Absolutely. And Todd, if there was, and this might be a difficult question, but if you can take a crack, if there was one thing that you can point out about your technology that is a competitive advantage, without obviously having to, disclose something that you don't want to, it might be competitive secret, something like that. But if there was one thing that you can point out about your technology that is bringing something different to the marketplace that the competitors are not bringing in, what would that be?
Well, what we've done is we've built, I had mentioned to you earlier that there's 3 ways to pay for an insurance policy, right? You can either have a one-time payment up front, you can use a payment plan offered by a carrier, or you can finance the premium. To my knowledge, we are the only company that offers all 3 payment methods. So any modality in which a policyholder wants to pay for a premium, someone can come to us and our platform can handle it. I have competitors that do one of those or 2 of them, but none of them that I'm aware of does all 3. So our ability to provide a singular platform for any method of payment to satisfy the premium is what we bring to the market. That's very, very unique, and it's complex and it's very bespoke, but it is it's unique. And I think that it represents. We have our customers telling us, it's so nice that I can buy all of this from you and I don't have to go anywhere else, because adding new parties in always creates confusion and friction. And then the customer experience, which all of us know, today is more important than ever, because if a customer they have one little hiccup on a website or one little hiccup on a email communication or whatever it might be, and they're like, I don't need this, I'm going to go somewhere else, right?
Exactly.
So that platform that brings all of those together in a singular fashion is really, really unique, and really and really is what I think is makes us stand out from our competitors.
Absolutely. And coming back to the people issue, right? We talk about artificial intelligence and people and the culture of people, and having a culture. So how do you, as a technology leader, more or less, your offering is sort of technology based, right?
Yeah.
How do you inculcate, how do you engender this culture where that allows you to keep that edge, right, against the competitors? And how do you what is one or two things that you do to bring that spirit of innovation within your people?
Well, customers always want more than what you have. They always want better solutions. So I always say, listen to the customer. You're going to, if you really take time to listen instead of talking to them or at them, you will learn things that they want.
Yes.
And you will then be able to weave that in to the next iteration of your service or your technology. So we do have expert groups that focus on the accounting piece and cash flow. We have expert groups that focus on customer service. We actually even have expert groups within expert groups in customer service. We're very, very deliberate and surgical about it, so that we can say customers that buy this product, or customers from this geographic region, or customers that have these types of relationships, they like these things better.
Sure.
And then we listen to that, and then we modify our technology and our service work and our workflows to deliver the experiences that they have expressed interest in to us. Or perhaps it was a frustration, so that we can remove that frustration.
Exactly.
So I just think that there is so much information available from the customer, and they can teach you so much if you're willing to listen. So that's part of our culture and part of how we weave nuances into our technological platforms.
Yeah, absolutely. And that brings us to this very important point, which is, I think it's a huge issue, especially for those who are, for our listeners and viewers. This is an insight moment, right? Which is, how do you do this, right? What's the mechanism through which you bring this culture? How do you set the culture? How do you communicate, right? And what are the exact mechanisms? In terms of, for example, you can have an all hands meeting, or you can have a once a year, off the premises kind of a retreat type of thing, and or you can have your quarterly or your weekly meetings, and then you can have you have executive management who's talking to the managers and leaders and team leaders, and they talk to their people in their meetings, and then there's this idea of one-on-one, right? What's the mix? What's the combination of communication strategies that you employ to kind of bring to instill this culture?
We do all of it, but here's the thing I want to say. I want to be cautious about how I say it, because if you listen to any really great leader, if you listen to, whether you like him or not, Elon Musk, or you listen to Jeff Bezos, they will all tell you, or Tim Cook, they'll all tell you that they're very cautious and careful about meetings, right? If you don't need to be in a meeting, get out of the room, and don't make sure meetings don't last more than a certain amount of time, because it is true that meetings can go on forever and ever and ever. So when I say to you that we do it all, I say it with a cautionary note, in that we have leadership meetings every quarter, and we talk about the quarterly business results.
Right.
We have multiple divisions throughout the company, and all of them have meetings with their people, and their meetings can be monthly. You can have quarterly reviews at that level. You can have monthly reviews. You also have weekly meetings as well.
Sure. So
the answer is, we do all of it, but we do it with a mindset that let's be careful and make sure that we're accomplishing something in this meeting.
Yeah.
And so what you find is that it's very easy, at least I think it's very easy to go rote, to just go robotic on something. And I'm doing my job, whether it's a call center representative, or whether it's someone that's doing some treasury work, or whether it's someone in the collection department or the underwriting department, or whatever it is that they're doing. It's very easy to get very rote with things. But so if you have those meetings and people are talking about things that they heard, things that they learned, then you can weave into the thinking of the people new ideas that maybe they weren't thinking about, and maybe break up some of that roteness. I just think it's important that if you're on autopilot, it's a problem. So
Absolutely.
have enough meetings to communicate well and effectively, efficiently, so you're not meeting forever. And make sure that you're getting something out of it, making sure that you're seeing behavioral enhancement with that process.
Yes, behavior enhancement. I like that. And how do you do that? How do you make it? How do you make sure that it doesn't become a rote thing?
Well, I think it's the leadership has to. The executives do jump into those meetings from time to time and make sure that those conversations are actually purposeful, right? But I think I think that I am a purveyor of LinkedIn. I'm reading things from people all the time, and I do come up with ideas and thoughts, and I shoot this over to my marketing department. Hey, some company did this, and some company did that. And I think that learning from others is really, really important, because it's very easy if you're super focused. We're hyper focused on our business, but by doing that, you can get some blinders on, right? Yes. So it's good to get some outside influence, and I encourage others to get outside influence from things, and they can bring those ideas to the table. So I think that roteness can be mitigated by making sure that you're keeping your ears and eyes out to what other people have done, what their successes have been, even more importantly, what their failures have been, because we all know you learn more from failure than you do from success.
100%.
Right?
Yeah.
So that type of a thing.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, and a lot of things you said that are so important, because there's this idea, and which is the idea behind this podcast, a little bit of a plug, which is that we need to be our own best business philosopher, meaning that we need to follow what our gut tells us, right? And all leaders do, right? Whether it's Elon Musk or Steve Jobs or Bill Gates, and at the end of the day, they trust themselves more than anybody else. But that doesn't mean that they don't listen to other people. They do listen to other people. They do take classes. They go, they do seminars. They do all those other things. But that's that high wire act, right? That we need to have our own focus. We know what we're all about, and at the same time, we need to have our minds open to other people who can influence us in a positive way. I think that's the fine balance that you're hitting here.
Yeah, I think it's a very natural filtering process, right? Even if I know that Bill Gates or Steve Jobs or Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk has done a great job, I'm going to take their thoughts and ideas and things that I see, and I'm going to then filter them. I'm going to listen to them, and then I filter them, and I say, how does that mix with my ethos and how I view the world? And I'm going to try to cull that down to take the things that I think are the best ideas that resonate most strongly with me, and then make some adaptations in my approach.
Absolutely. 100%. Entrepreneurship, leadership is not always moonlight and roses, right? And there is,
No, it's not.
And so there are challenges sometimes, organizationally, personally. And I like to ask this kind of question, which is something like, what has there ever been a moment? I like to call it the dark night of the soul. It doesn't have to be that stark and deep, but and dark. But we face challenges, and we have to work through them. And you're here, obviously, so you conquered your challenges. And so, could you tell us about something that happened, or a circumstance that you got into, or an event that happened? Somehow, something somewhere, something struck. And it got you personally or organizationally or in your career, it got you into the dark night of the soul type of a moment or something like that.
Yeah, we sure
anything
did.
like that?
Yeah, sure. Well, of course. I mean, we've been in business for 41 years. We didn't. We're battle tested at this point.
Yeah.
So there was a point in time back in 1999, which I know is forever ago for a lot of people, 26 years ago. But in my 41-year history, it's moderately a while ago.
Yeah.
We secured. I was so excited about growing, and I brought on some really big customers at the same time. And we had trouble ingesting that business. So we started to see, people were getting frustrated, and people were they didn't feel like they had proper direction. And we found that there was this middle layer of management that was not as strong as it needed to be. And then what happened is because that area wasn't strong, all of the senior leadership had to stop what they were doing and jump back down in and fix this, right? Educate these folks, maybe expand that middle layer of management so that we had a more robust platform upon which to build the business. And it was a painful process. It took us about a year to a year and a half of going through a lot of complaining. We picked up the phone every morning and our customers were yelling at us because things weren't getting done timely or there were too many errors or whatever it might be. And it really taught us about being careful about, look, I talked a lot earlier on in our conversation about being aspirational. And if you want to be a successful business person, you need to be aspirational at the day after you start and until the day before you retire, right? For sure. But you have to moderate that aspiration or at least couple it with enough vision to know, I got to be very careful about that next step I take. Am I prepared for it? Is the team educated? Do I need more people? Do I have the right resources? What's this going to do to my organization after I onboard them or during that time? And is everything else going to be handled? So it was a very difficult time for us. And fortunate thing is we didn't lose those customers, but we did go through some pain with them. And we have learned that lesson now. And we've brought that forward now through the last 26 years. And we make sure that when we look at the next sizable client that we have an opportunity to onboard, we first stop and say, okay, we know we can't onboard them in 30 days. Maybe it's going to take us 60 or 90. Do we have the right resources? What do we need? What's the ramp up time going to be? And we're really methodical about that. I think discipline is what it taught us because you want to grab the world. But and you don't want to be disciplined because discipline feels like contraction. It feels like restriction. And when you're trying to grow, the last thing you want to be is restricted. But if you don't plan and you're not disciplined, you're going to have you have the possibility of having some cracks in the foundation that are very painful to fix. Yes. Yeah, and you come out the other end, and here you are. Right, talking about it, which is great, and the lesson is awesome, right? So discipline, and so that's one lesson, obviously. And as we go through, so Todd in 1984 and Todd today, right? Entrepreneurial journey, leadership journey. Sometimes it kind of changes us, right? It's through these kinds of moments. Or just, we hopefully become wiser a little bit, right? And become more battle tested, to use your terminology. And it changes us sometimes, hopefully, in a positive way, right? So what is the difference between Todd Greenbaum in 1984, or even before that, right? And Todd today? Is there a difference between the two versions of you? Yeah, I think the answer was back then, I can do it all and I can do it tomorrow. Back then. Now I'm like, well, I can do it all, but I can't do it all tomorrow. Just to repeat what I just said a minute ago. And it's really understanding what construct in your business. People wise. It's largely, to a large extent, it's people. You can modify software to do things. Right. And unless your software has some limiting factor, and like our software, we've never had a scale problem with our software. And I think properly built software, scale is not, it doesn't, at least it's not an issue for us. Right. We've never had we've never had an issue with it.
Right.
But scaling an organization and maintaining that cohesion of people, because you don't want, if you like your culture, you love your culture, you don't want it to change if you go 50% or 100% larger. So I'm more thoughtful about the impact that growth has on on people's dispositions. I want all of the people that work with us to be aspirational, to be excited. I don't want them waking up in the morning saying, "Oh, I got to go to work today." I want them to really enjoy what they do. And because when they enjoy it, the customers know they're enjoying it. Howard Schultz at
100%.
Starbucks, they always talk about, the shareholder, they talk about the employee, and they talk about the customer. And for years and years or decades, it was always like, you got to satisfy the customer first. And Howard Schultz famously said, employees are number one, because if you take care of your employees, they will take care of the customers, and the customer revenue will satisfy the shareholders. And so I'm a believer in that. So the difference between me back then, which was like, it was just, damn the torpedoes, just go. We can do anything we want. We can all do it all tomorrow.
Yeah.
I'm more thoughtful about that. And I think about how can I make sure I build a resilient organization of
Yes.
people that can really deliver these services to our clients in
Yeah.
a meaningful and positive way
Right.
before I jump off the diving board and go
Sure.
do that.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. And I have to believe hiring is a piece of that, right? Hiring the right
Oh
people
yeah,
and having the right people in the right
it's
seat.
super important. Yeah.
Yes, right, and then of course, then you bring the cultural aspects to them, and it's other tools and support and things like that, right?
Yeah,
Um,
it's not
yeah,
just me. The entire C-suite, the leadership team of this business really does that. We're fortunate. The C-suite we've been working together for 26 years. They joined us in
he-
1999,
oh
so
wow,
it's been a
wow,
long time.
yeah, yeah,
And we have people working for us for 30, 35 years. We're very
yeah,
proud of that.
yes,
That
it should
that
be, yeah,
culture is deep,
yes,
and therefore when new people come on board, they feel it, right?
yeah, right, right,
And
yeah,
it
yeah,
really it's a really nice thing.
absolutely. And on that point, Todd, if most business owners and founders and leaders that I speak with, they never talk about retirement. They don't want to retire. They don't want to talk about it. And yet, I think there is this idea of stepping back, not necessarily stepping back from the company, but stepping from the role enough that it can be filled in with other people who can feel empowered to do their leadership job. Meaning that you're not creating an organization that is just depending on you as in me, this person who is always driving it, but stepping back enough in creating enough vacuum so that others can step in and they take the leadership roles, so that if you do have to step back and if you do want to take a sabbatical, go away for 3 months, right, and you come back, the company is still working and growing, and right, in some way, shape, or form, right? So if with that as the background, if you were to hand off the leadership of your company to one person or a group of people in your organization, what would be one thing that you would tell them? That, change everything else. I'm going to go away for 6 months and change whatever you want, or longer. Change whatever you want, but don't touch this one thing. What would that be?
Well, first, I'm not interested in doing that right now. I have no vision. I have no vision of doing that. I'm having too much fun with what I'm doing.
Yeah,
frankly, I want to keep my brain going at high speeds, because I love to live in that environment.
Yeah.
But I think that I am a big believer in self-reflection.
Uh-huh.
And so I would just say, make sure that you're always double checking yourself and that you're not getting too big for your britches. Make sure that you are not kind of buying your own BS. I hope it's okay to say that here. I just,
100%. Yeah.
I'm always, I think that you need to be introspective.
Yeah.
And I think that you need to be humble. And so I really, that to me is important, because think about what that does. When you're humble to your customers, they feel it. When you're humble to your employees, they feel it. And when you're willing to look in the mirror and say, I'm wrong, or I'm sorry for that, people really respect that. And so, I just, the way that resonates through a team of people, they see it, and they tend to they respond better to management that way. So I would say, stay introspective, stay humble, stay respectful. Those are the things that I think are just core to our DNA.
Mm-hmm. I love it. What I love about it is that you're keeping it so broad, in the sense that you're not exactly giving them, do this, in the sense that it becomes restricted, that the instruction becomes restrictive. You're keeping it broad enough, and it still is a reflection of who you are at your core. I think I have to believe that, and that's something that you value in your own leadership style, right?
That's
all
right.
Those three things that you pointed out, right?
Yeah.
So, and all of these things that you're doing, and you love what you do, and you exude that, and it's just it pours out. And something else that I want to point out is that operational, when we become operationally efficient, we can lose that's spring in the step, as in the aspirational aspect of things. Aspirational thing is not unimportant, And you kept that, right? Even as you brought this discipline and this discipline and operational excellence to what you do. And that combination is something that you're doing so well. And I kind of wanted to point that out.
Well, I appreciate it. It always excites me to figure out how I can do something better.
Is there anything that we haven't covered yet in our conversation that you would like to kind of voice an opinion on, or any thoughtful ideas that you have, any insights?
I think that we've actually, since COVID, we went entirely remote. Okay.
Yeah.
And it was a really interesting journey, because all that water cooler conversation that used to happen is not there. You can't just walk into someone's office. Well, I say totally remote. We have a small office here. We have 240 people on the team, and there's about 15 of them here in the office, and we're hiring people from all over the country and in other countries as well.
Yeah.
And so it was. I think there's other companies that are going through that. There is a call back to work, but there's a lot of employees that are pushing back against that. And so what I found was that we had to make a big cultural shift in the way in which we interface with people. And I think the companies need to be mindful of that. Just because someone likes the creature comforts of working from home and can drop off their kids at school and pick them up, which is very important, or take care of their pets, or whatever it is that's important to them. Those are wonderful things to be able to give them.
Right.
But you can lose cultural, integration at the business.
Yeah.
And that was a really interesting learning curve for us. And there's a couple of people in our operations, not the least of which is our COO. And she did a spectacular job at helping really keep that culture going. And I know it because we fly people in, because we're remote. So we'll take a team of 15 people and we'll bring them into the home office and we'll meet with them. And their enthusiasm is just what you want it to be. It was wonderful. Yes. So, I guess what I'm saying is that I think it's just, if you're a business owner or an entrepreneur and you're starting a business, don't diminish or underestimate the criticality of the maintenance of your culture and your messaging and your aspirations. It will dissipate over the internet lines. So you've got to keep that going. You've got to figure out a way to ensure that your culture is still passing through the camera. Right.
Yes.
And that's really, really important. So I think that's one thing we didn't talk about. And I think it's really important because we learned a great lesson with that. Fortunately, we had great people that executed on that. I didn't anticipate how much work it would actually be. Right. But it was something that was critical, something that we did successfully. And if I was going into that journey, I would want someone to tell me, beware of this and make sure that you create a richness in that connectivity that's virtual, because you're going to miss it in person and you need to keep it intact.
Yes. Yeah. I love the fact that you're not saying that, hey, you must bring them back into the office. That may be a part of it, right? And that may, but that's not the final solution necessarily. What you're saying is that make sure that you keep that culture, even as, your culture is spread out across the wire. In different pockets of the world, wherever your employees might be, right? So, and then that gives you an idea to get creative as to how do you do this? And what are the things that we need to do to maintain what our culture is? And then that gets you into the introspection about, well, what is our culture? Yeah. And that's a good conversation to have, right?
Yeah.
As we do all these things as a leader, all leaders, right? They thrive on what they do, they're very passionate about what they do, and they never want to give that up, right? They love it, and you fit that 100% to the T. And yet, when we're on all the time, right? There could be, and it doesn't have to be a burnout, like a big burnout kind of blowout type of thing, but it sometimes can probably uproot us in a little bit, in a way, in some way, right? And so there is a need for grounding and rooting, right? As a person, as a leader. So the question I have for you, Todd, is, as you do all of these things, is there anything that you do or any place that you go, literally or figuratively, to root yourself and ground yourself, to recharge yourself? And what is that? Yeah.
Well, I mean, I hope it's I hope it's in line with what you're expecting, but it's a hobby that I have. I'm an amateur musician. I'm in a band with a bunch of guys who are 50 and 60 years old, and we play rock and roll from the 80s and 90s, and we gig at local clubs. And so I always find if I come off of a stressful day or a stressful week, or I'm dealing with a client issue or whatever it is, and I got band rehearsal this night, I can just forget it all, put my headphones on, get into the music with them. And I love music. I've loved music since the beginning of time. And so for me, and I can just absolutely just get into it. And I don't, and all of my problems just evaporate for those 3 or 4 hours. I'm doing that with the guys once a week or so. And so that's what I do. And I do find myself incredibly refreshed. And of course, exercise is critical,
Sure.
As you get older, there's a direct correlation between your level of what your health span is likely to be and your exercise. Yeah. And so I'm very committed to exercising 5 days a week.
Sure.
And that's really, really important. And when I do that, I always say, I have a saying that everyone laughs about. I say, I wish I didn't do that, said no one ever after leaving the gym. Right? So,
always.
When's the last time we worked out and you said, gee, I wish I didn't do that? Zero times.
100% of the time you think,
you're saying to yourself going in, I really don't want to do this. I really am too tired to do this. But when you leave, you're like, I'm so glad I did that. So think about how healthy that is for you, right?
Yeah.
So those two things, I think the music and exercise are really important.
That's awesome.
That's how I do it.
Who is the best person for you to get in touch with right now, and how do they get hold of you?
Well, from my perspective, I'm from a business perspective, I'm always looking to grow the business. I'm really excited about talking to new customers because the TAM, to go back to the very first part of our conversation, is so huge and we have such a small part of it. So I'm super excited about that. So my drive is to talk to customers and learn about what they want. And that just invigorates me about how can I solve that problem? So that's really who I want to talk to. I would love to mentor and make more connections, but to be very frank with you, Bhavesh, I'm so busy growing my business right now that that's really what I'm doing. And even after 41 years, I'm still excited about doing that. That's what I want to do, right?
Absolutely.
I still love talking to friends. I go out with friends and we talk about business issues and people issues all the time, and that's always very, very helpful. But really, it's my interest in talking to prospective customers and figuring out how can I make your life better? How can I make your business stronger? And as far as how to reach us, our website is really the best place to go, which is www.input1.com. That's one with a number one, not an O-N-E.
Input and number one, right?
Yeah, input and the number one.com. That's the best place to go. My LinkedIn profile, the company's LinkedIn profile. These are the best places to go find, to contact us. And, we're very responsive. I have a good marketing team that follows up on things. And so those are the best places to reach us.
Absolutely. We put all that information in our show notes so that people can, link through and find out more about you. Great. So thank you so much, Todd. This was a blast.
I really enjoyed it, Bhavesh.
In terms of mentorship, I think part of what we're doing right now is, you sharing your knowledge and how you built this company, which is absolute gold. We talk about business philosophy here. The idea behind business philosophy is that, it's not philosophy, pure philosophy. Pure philosophy is pie in the sky, right? You can talk about all the things that could be wonderful. But when the tires hit the runway, that's where the magic happens, right? That's the business part, right? How do you make that philosophy executable and applicable in the marketplace? And I think that folks like you who lead and found companies and grow the companies and make them sustainable, sustainability is so important. Folks like you who do that, you are the drivers of the economy, right? So, that's where the magic is. And you're not yet a $100 billion company right now. So you're in that nice spot where, we have a lot to learn from you. I don't think I would ever have Bill Gates here on the podcast. So, we'll see. But I want to talk to, folks who, still have that aspiration, right?
Yeah.
And, the drive is still there. So I had a blast having you on the podcast. And
I enjoyed it very much. Thanks for inviting me.
In terms of mentorship, I think part of what we're doing right now is, you sharing your knowledge and how you built this company, which is absolute gold. we talk about business philosophy here. The idea behind business philosophy is that, it's not philosophy, pure philosophy. Pure philosophy is pie in the sky, right? You can talk about all the things that could be wonderful.
Yeah.
But when the tires hit the runway, that's where the magic happens, right? That's the business part, right? How do you make that philosophy executable and applicable
That's right. Yeah.
in the marketplace? And I think that folks like you who lead and found companies and grow the companies and make them sustainable. The sustainability is so important. Folks like you who do that, you are the drivers of the economy, right? So, that's where the magic is.